Want more hockey? Good. Elliotte Friedman joins us now for 3 of 31, brought to you by the next generation GMC Sierra. We are professional grade. Make sure to check out Elliotte's weekly 31 Thoughts. The column is up right now on sportsnet.ca. Good day, Fried. You look fantastic.
Don't lie to the viewers.
Well, yeah, you know me too well, Fried. All right, trade deadline 6-ish weeks away in the National Hockey League. Let's just dive into that right now.
Okay.
We're just talking about the Oilers and the Canucks game tonight. Peter Chiarelli, always among the trade rumors, Fried. It feels like a weekly question. Forgive me if I sound repetitive. What are you hearing on the Oilers front?
You know, I still think they're looking to see if they can add another forward, a scorer to help them up front, some speed. Clefbaum's coming back. He's obviously been a huge player for them, a horse on the blue line. And look, they're right in it. You might feel that they're, whatever people feel about where the Oilers are as a team, they're in the race. And from a business point of view, this matters. Their ownership wants them to make the playoffs. There's jobs on the line. There's ticket and suite sales on the line. They're in the race, and they're going to go for it. Now, I've heard everything from they'll look at, rentals as long as the price isn't that expensive, to they'll look at something with some term or some team control that's young and fast. And in that particular case, they consider dealing their first-round pick, which I assume would have some sort of protection on it, and possibly Jesse Puljujarvi. Now, I have to tell you, I've gotten some very mixed results in terms of him. I've had teams tell me he is potentially available for the right price. I've had teams tell me that he's not available for the right price. I've had teams tell me that there are people in the Oilers who are willing to trade him. And I've had teams tell me there's people in the Oilers who are not willing to trade him and want to keep him and be patient. So there's a lot going around on that particular player, but I do think overall the Oilers are looking to add another forward if they can.
I want to send people to your column at sportsnet.ca, but there are a bunch of names in the column this week that caught my eye, that caught a Spockian eyebrow. What are the ones that surprise you the most that you've been hearing in these talks about the trade deadline, Free?
Oh, boy. I mean, I think a lot of that happened earlier with some of the St. Louis names. Nick was the one who reported Pietrangelo, and then he talked about Tarasenko. And, those are pillars on that team for a long time. I think those are the names that would probably stand out. And to be honest, guys, I think the best answer to that question, Tim, is we probably don't know yet. As you said, we're 5-6 weeks away, and the way some of these teams are falling by the wayside, I think there's going to be some even more surprising names that come up.
I want to talk Ottawa, and I want to talk about the arena situation because there's some interesting stuff in the column about that. But on the ice, are we about to see a much different team in Ottawa? Guys like Mark Stone and a returning Matt Duchene?
I think they're going to do everything they can to sign Mark Stone. I really do think that he's priority number one. He's an Ottawa guy in terms of he's their guy. They've created him. They developed him. He seems to really like it in the city. He's given no indication that he wants to leave. I think that would be big for the market if they could do it. I think they're really trying to see if they can get him done. I heard they met on Monday with his agents. He's represented by Newport. I think they're doing everything they can to get Stone done. Duchene, I think, is less of a certainty. Like Stone, there's a lot of interest in him. I'm curious to see where that one goes. Dorian's meeting with his agent in Los Angeles today, Pat Brisson. I'm not as certain that Duchene stays. I'm not as certain about the chances for Duchene staying as I believe in the chances for Stone staying. So I think that that's probably how I would handicap it. I thought it was interesting that when they went out west for 3 games where Duchene stayed home to be with his family as the child was born, they played pretty hard, and some of those guys with an opportunity stepped up and played pretty hard too. And I think they also look at it like they can recoup some assets that they lost in trading for him, and him and Stone are the best ways to do it, though like I said, I think they will do everything they can to sign Stone.
All right, that's the on-ice business stuff going on with the Senators. The off-ice business stuff going on with the Senators from an arena standpoint. Mediation is going on with LeBreton Flats and Ruddy's Group and Eugene Melnick and the mediator. Fried, we've learned this week there is a familiar face, but a newer face to the mediation process going on. A, who is it? B, what the hell does it mean?
Well, it's another group, DevCore, PowerCore. Basically, the simplest way for me to do it, for people who are not familiar with it, is it's a group that features a man by the name of Andre Desmarais, who's shown interest in, we believe he's shown interest in buying the Senators in the past. And their group finished runner-up to the Melnyk-Ruddy group in this whole thing. They lost out, and now reports have said, and people have said to me, that they are indeed part of the mediation. And the reason that's significant is because they have wanted to be part of this process. They've made it very clear that they feel they should be part of this process, but legally they were not allowed to be part of the process because they weren't part of the winning bid. And I was told that at one point in the overall situation, Eugene Melnyk was concerned that they were getting involved, and he sent out a lawyer's letter saying, you know, that's against the rules and could open you up to litigation. Well, from what I understand in this particular case, guys, Eugene Melnyk has invited them to be part of the deal, and at least part of the conversation towards a deal. So that takes the legal problem out of the way. You know, there's some cautious optimism. They have a lot of connections. They are financially available to do, financially able to do a lot of things, and they also have the infrastructure to do a lot of things. The sense I get is there is optimism that something can happen here by, if not by February 28th, then maybe they get another extension. But there's no question that the overall tone of the talks have changed with their inclusion now, as opposed to where we were just before Christmas, when everybody thought this train was going off the rails and into a ditch.
The seemingly inevitable speculation in Ottawa would lead to, could they be in on an ownership package or even buy the team from Eugene Melnyk? How far away from that are we with this kind of news? You know,
I do think it's possible in the conversations, Tim, that an ownership stake comes up. If I was them, I would ask. And I think it's possible. The one thing I think everybody has to realize is that there was there was a bid for the Senators that was at max $400 million in the summer. It might have been less. And the NHL and Eugene Melnyk rejected that flat out. So if $400 million is a no-go, if they have a new arena downtown, what's the team worth? And so you have to be willing to pay for that stake based on the downtown valuation. So yes, I do see it as a possibility, and it wouldn't surprise me if it did happen. But one of the things that has to happen as part of this process is to value the team based on having a downtown arena. And when you take a look at one recent expansion team for $500 million and another one for $650 million US, you know that that's where the league wants to be, somewhere close to that larger number.
And the league is an important caveat here, because the league wants the value of the franchise to be around that number. We all kind of understand that. Is this something that the league could or should get involved in?
I always believe they have their hands in it. There's someone today who said to me that they believe that the league didn't have a huge hand in this one. I don't know, but the one thing I can tell you guys is when everybody was freaking out about this over the last month, the league was very calm. You know, every time I reached out to them for comment, all they would say is they're not panicking. So I have always believed that they knew there were other options, there were other paths to potential success in Ottawa. Never once did I get the sense they were threatening the city with losing the team. I think they made it very clear to the mayor and to everybody else that they believed a downtown arena was of paramount importance to the future of the Ottawa Senators. But I never got the sense in dealing with the league that they were overly panicky about what was going to happen.
All right, to be continued on that, Friedge. Great work on that front. Let's move down the 401. I want to bring up the Leafs for a second, Friedge.
I've heard of them.
Yes. The Gardner booing issue has taken up a lot of oxygen in the room. The bigger picture here, though, is I don't think Kyle Dubas anticipated by mid-January being in the thick of a home ice fight.
Yeah.
I just don't think this was in the cards for him starting off the year. Has Dubas's vision, his perception of this roster, changed at all compared to earlier in the season?
I would think so. I think it would have to, Sid, because of just everything that's happened. Also, you're constantly evaluating your group. I think name a defenseman, I think they're considering the possibility. And I think they've thrown some guys out. Like, for example, I'm not convinced they're in on the Dougie Hamilton train, for example. I don't believe they are, but I think they're investigating just about any and all defensemen that could be potentially available. You know, I think the other thing is there's another storyline here, and that is Anderson. It's pretty clear that they don't want him to play that much. You know, he's going to have to, and they're going to want him in there. Maybe we'll see what happens, but he was on pace to play 70 games this season before he got hurt, and they kind of shut him down a bit. And, you know, I think that if he's at his best, if you look around the league, how many teams have great goaltending tandems anymore? We're expanded by one team, we're going to expand by another, and you see what's going on. That's why Babcock wants to play him, and they've got to find somebody else, whether it's Hutchinson or Clark, that can win games for them. So I think that's as big a factor as anything else, because Anderson was dynamite earlier on in the season. You know, I think the other thing too, guys, is this has been a really, quote-unquote, interesting year. In addition to everything that's happened on the ice, there's all the off-ice noise that is going on around them. There's Nylander. There's the continued discussion over Marner and Matthews and their future, Gardner to a lesser degree. Everything that's kind of surrounding the team. At times I've wondered just how much of a toll that has or has not taken on the group. And, you know, I just think that this has been a year with a lot of distractions around. And I think as the year goes on, you get closer to the playoffs and you hope to try and forget about that. But I still think it's kind of lingering there. And I wonder how much of an effect that's taken.
I know it's a solid point. I know a lot of the Leaf fans have been pointing to defensemen, heavy defensemen. We've heard Mike Babcock use the word heavy a lot. And one of the names that comes up that isn't among defensemen is Wayne Simmons. Is it only a matter of time before Wayne Simmons finds a new home, whether it be Toronto or elsewhere?
I think it's more likely than not he gets traded, yes, Tim. You know, the one thing about Kyle Dubas, though, is that he's never really bought into that theory. If you go back into his history, whether he was the general manager at Sault Ste. Marie or when he ran the Marlies under the Maple Leafs umbrella, there was always talk that those teams weren't heavy enough, and he's ignored it. He believes in his philosophy, and he goes that way. So I don't know if it's going to be any different this year. I'm not convinced whether it's Simmons or it's Furland or it's Darian Hatcher or anybody else that he's going to go out and say, I'm going to acquire a heavy player.
You know, it's funny. We brought this up on the show, and I'm not trying to stir it up, but Mike Babcock refers to heavy hockey all the time. And either he's trying to tell his team to play heavier, or he's trying to tell someone that he needs a couple heavier players. And it's an interesting dichotomy.
I think it's probably some combination of both. I mean, there have been times this year where Babcock's made it very clear he'd rather play Anderson. And it's obvious that the organization has kind of said, no, between the injury and everything else, we don't want him to play that much. And I'm not sure Babcock's 100% comfortable with it, but I think he understands. I think there's the talk about heavy hockey. I'm sure he would want to get some players who were like that. But I think one thing we've learned in Toronto is that the coach gets to make the roster, but the GM is the one that provides the ingredients. Remember the old Bill Parcells quote? Yeah. You expect me to cook the dinner, let me choose the ingredients. The GM here chooses the ingredients, Babcock cooks the dinner. I understand he's a pretty good chef.
Well, I don't know. You're cooking up some stuff every week with us, man.
Yes, sir.
You look like a chef yourself. 31 Thoughts.
I don't even know what that means.
You know what that means. You know. 31 Thoughts. Elliotte Friedman, Sportsnet.ca. He's good at his craft. Thanks, Rich.
Take care, boys.